Hey everyone, it's your boy Marcus Norman of Gentleman Style Podcast Show. And today we're going to kick things off with a very unique topic. I have a very special guest coming to the Gentleman Style Podcast Show today. And I'm so excited when he said yes. I couldn't believe he said yes. Hopefully he doesn't regret it. Today I have coming to the Gentleman Style Podcast stage, Mr. Pete Turner. This man has done it all. He's lived multiple lives and he has experience in various areas, and he speaks to modern warfare, podcasting, foreign affairs, espionage. But what he's known for is his experience as a combat spy. And now today he is a podcaster and he's seen and done a lot. His job has taken him all across the world and doing the things most Americans dreamed of. I would say I've always wanted to be a spy. I think we've all been there where we've wanted to be a spy and just kind of experience that James Bond lifestyle. But we actually have today our very own James Bond. So without further ado, I can't hold this man back anymore because what he has to share is going to change your mind and blow your mind. So help me welcome to the stage the incredible, amazing Mr. Pete Turner. Welcome to the show, brother. I appreciate you. How are you?
Well, likewise. I'm great, man. Thanks. It's always an honor being someone else's hair. I know what it takes to do what we do, and it's no small thing. So believe me, I know what it's like to sit in that left side of the screen and do the job. So I appreciate you. Thank you very much for having me.
I appreciate you, brother. And you are right. You are doing podcasting, but you've also lived many lives. So thank you for what you do, for serving our country in many different ways. You are my hero today on Gentleman Style Podcast. So it is a true honor to host you, sir. I want us to kind of start off with a curveball. I want to start off little curveball.
I hit the curve. That's not a problem. So go ahead.
Yeah, I know you're gonna knock it out of the park. I want to talk about your life experiences. What made you? What would you say has constituted what you are today, the man you've become today? Is it something that grew up in your life, or were you blessed with enormous wealth and money and advancements and opportunity? Was mom and dad, the Rothschilds, and you had a trust fund or anything like that? I want to talk to your background so people can learn a little bit about who you are.
Regular middle class kid, probably lower middle class. My folks both worked, and we just did it. We lived our life modestly. We had things we didn't necessarily want for things, but my folks had to hustle to make sure that was the case. But we lived pretty well. Not Rothschilds by any means. Both my folks were very humble people. One worked for the phone company and one worked for a public transit authority. So, these aren't where you make millionaires. Yeah, you can have a good living and everything, but no, very very modest, humble things. And I guess when I came up, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. That was like a big thing. And as I tried to sort out what it was that I was going to do, I guess I would have to say this too. But my dad was a tough guy to be around, and it was kind of scary at home. And so I spent a lot of time out of the house. If he was home, I wanted to not be home because it was hard to predict what was going to happen. There's a lot of eggshell walking. And so I spent a lot of time out of the house just doing other things and sort of learned it just worked out that I learned how to live in other people's worlds because I didn't want to be in the world that I had where my home was. And that was the biggest thing that drove me. So it wasn't money. It was more just trying to navigate. And it doesn't mean my dad was a bad dad. He just was a conflicted dad. And then there were times where I just couldn't trust him. I didn't know how to trust. And it took me a long time to learn the lessons about that wiring that went into my upbringing so that I could live a relatively normal adult life. Yeah.
Absolutely. How do you go through life now? Because being a combat spy, traveling the world, working in foreign countries, most of the
Yeah.
times undercover, if not all the time undercover, how has that shaped you into
Mhm.
how you perceive the world and go through the world and experience the world today?
Yeah, and so let me say this, I didn't work undercover for the most part. There's jobs that I've done that had cover that was provided, but for the most part, my job was to be open about what I was doing because I had to work quickly. I was with the American forces for the vast majority of the time, and so when I would go out, if they would say, and they did at times, they would say, "Are you a spy?" And then I would say, "Yes, I am." And then I would
Hmm.
say, "Ask you a question you don't want to answer. Don't answer it," because I wasn't there to. I was there to win, right? But my job was to understand what the other side was doing, and then I had to be able to communicate back to our side. And I'll tell you truthfully that not physically, but professionally, it was more dangerous for me on the post because I had a lot of bad news. It's really hard to fix these places. We were desperate to fix them, and it's very, 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 very hard to prevent an attack. It's you can try every single day, never know if you did anything, and push, 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 and still not prevent something because it turns out they don't want to tell you about that. So the best way to prevent the attacks was to be an asset to the other side. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean like the Taliban, but I do mean the Taliban, and I do mean the local government that I was working with. I do mean the farmers and the sheikhs and the elders and the warlords and all those people. If I became an advisor to them, then they would tell me things they wouldn't otherwise tell me. And that's the essence of my job is how do I help the commander win more and lose less, help the enemy lose more and win less. And if I could gather that in one piece of information, then that's the gold standard. And you do that not by saying, where's the bombs, where's the danger, where's the threat, where's the bad guys? You do that by never talking about that. And then that information will come in as it's made available to you. And I would network into different places, different people, and it's a lot when you do that job, when you're a spy, your job is to know everybody, and it takes time to know everybody, and you can only meet so many people in so many days, and so it's very easy to miss something obvious. I can be directed by a unit, but that doesn't mean that I have the license to talk to the person that I may need to talk to right away. It might take me 6 weeks to build that trust. It might take me 6 months to build trust, depending on the person. Again, remember, these people are all they're like abused kids. They're very skittish. They don't want to trust people, and so their default is to make you earn trust. And that's what I learned how to do was how do you build trust with somebody reliably, repeatedly, and advance it and make it higher risk trust as you go, so that I'm putting my life into the hands of a sheikh who's like, Pete, I'll protect you. Just come. Don't bring the army because it's too much when they're here. We can't talk like we can talk if it's just the two of us. And so not all the time, but on occasion I would do that, and that would create a different world for me. And that's informed a lot of how I see the world. Like I want to build trust. I want to take opportunities to do things that are uncomfortable so that I can understand the other person's world. And if I can accomplish my mission through their path, their cultural path, their norms, then that's better than having to smash their norms and defy them and just walk over the top of them to do what I want to do. So rather than go A to B, which causes problems, I go to A to wherever it goes to, as long as I'm always trying to help the commander win more, lose less, enemy lose more, win less.
I never even thought about that. And but what you're saying and what you're teaching, and that's the word that comes to mind, is trust. You're building
Right.
rapport with your enemy or what seems to be your enemy to achieve a mutual understanding of respect and admiration. And hey, we
Yeah.
it is not, you have to give something in order to win. To achieve
Right.
your goals, I have to hear you out. And it's not necessarily a win. If I come in here guns ablazing, army behind me, that's gonna be messy, right? And so I can see how that can work in business, right? And in podcasting, where instead of me trying to take you out, instead of me trying to look at the business next door, can we collaborate on anything? Is there anything we can agree on,
Get it.
right? And and
Yeah.
and you kind of point that out, like, here, okay, we disagree vastly on these aspects, but right here in this
Yeah.
little box right here, can we agree on this? And then
Yeah.
you slowly work out the details. So is that what I'm picking up? Is that what I'm picking
Yeah,
up?
it's a lot of that. Like, a lot of what we don't know, we can't fathom. And a lot of what we assume is completely unfounded. And so I look for the ground truth. So it doesn't matter what we think the ground truth is. It's like, what is it here? Well, our number one problem is this, like electricity or whatever it is. Very common for electricity to be a big problem. Well, I can't necessarily solve that. What's the smallest problem we could solve today? And then they'll inevitably have something. Oh, you know what would help? Well, this would help. And then so I try to take that thing, that super small thing. I don't accomplish the mission. That's not my job. But I say, how about if we go meet with the governor? And because keep in mind, these people aren't tied to the government in Afghanistan and Iraq. That they're just they don't think the governor has an asset. So I'm like, what if we went and met with that person and we try to solve this goal? I'll bring the commander. And by the way, there's some backdoor like ginning up of all this, right? So that nobody's caught unaware on the boss side. So my boss, the Iraqi boss, these guys know this is coming. And they're like, yeah. And so then and there's a little bit of theater in this, right? So the Iraqi governor will turn to the commander and say, you're going to do this thing. And the commander is prepared for it. He's like, absolutely. Yes, sir. Whatever you need. Let's make sure we get it done. And it's just this tiny little thing, man. Like there was this one time when I asked this question and they're like, you guys put a tank track right here. And we don't mind it being there. We know it has to be there because of the military thing. But if you guys could move it like 100 yards that way, because what happens here, and then they had this whole thing where like that was a particularly bad spot for them on their shitty cars and I'm sorry, their bad cars and what it did to them and the access and the places that were there and it caused problems that we didn't even know about. And so sure enough, like the commander and I and the governor got together. And so we invited that guy in. Now that guy meets the governor and he's like, oh, I thought you were just some dude. He's like, I am just some dude, but I'm a dude that's here to help you. What's your problem? Well, we got this tank truck. I was telling Pete about it. And the guy knew my name, and I'm like, oh, cool. It's cool that this he was ultimately like a farmer kind of survivalist guy. It's like, I got my kids. I can't send them to school over that direction because it's just too crazy over there. And that tank track is a big part of it. It causes cars to slow down and it's just too dangerous. And I'm like, I can get down with that. And the governor said, I can get down with that. And the boss is like, I can get down with that. So how do we do it? Where do we put it? Where should it be? And so we were able to fix this small thing. And now hopefully the next time that guy has a small problem, maybe he'll go to the governor. Maybe he'll come to me, right? But that's a different problem. It's a higher order problem. And I think in business, if we do a lot of these things, if I understand your goal, if I understand how you think, how you solve problems to get to your goal, well, it's on me now to figure out how I adapt to your situation. By the way, I've also got to communicate my goal to you and kind of explain here's how the Army does things so that you can say, oh, that's why you guys do all that. Yeah. Like one thing that we do a lot of in the Army, and it's for security, and it's a smart thing. We just show up unannounced, right? So that we're always randomized and it reduces our threat. Well, that's a terrible way to run a business meeting. And so I would say to these guys, and keep in mind, this is professional grade. So I'm not saying go start doing this, but in the business world, not as dangerous. And so I would say to you, and I'd say, hey, I'd like to come meet you again. I don't know what your schedule is. What's the best way to do this? How do I keep you safe, keep me safe, and yet have a productive meeting? What are your thoughts? And like, why don't you meet me Tuesday at noon? Because Monday I've got this budget meeting. Now, here's the thing I learned, right? So now I go back to the Army, and they're like, we're gonna go pop in on Dave on Monday, and I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that. He's got a budget meeting. You know,
Mm.
and by the way, I've also pre-thought this out too. I've also said to Dave at the budget meeting, I'm like, "Ooh, would you mind if I sat in on that? I'd be fascinated by that." And if they say yes, maybe I sit in. I'm like, "We don't have to do any work. I just want to observe." And then I get to sit in the room, and they're like, "Who's that?" "Oh, that's Pete. He's just here to observe. He's a cool dude." And then I'm going to talk to him tomorrow. So now he's introducing me to his friends on the Iraqi side or the Afghan side, and now I've got access to a place that I wouldn't have had access to. We didn't show up unannounced on the guy's busiest workday and pull him out of this budget meeting because we have guns and he's terrified to not be there for us. And it's just this multi-win thing, or by just being respectful and acting like the other person is worthy of respect and giving them the ability to say, here's what my life is like. Man, I'll tell you what, that paid the bills so many times, and it continues to pay the bills with what I do now, just by respecting what they need and seeing if we can work within their paradigm where they're comfortable. Man, oh man, it unlocks doors.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have you ever felt your life was in danger?
Oh my gosh, geez, so
All
many times.
so many times. So many
So
times.
many times.
It,
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, my job is dangerous, and so I don't get to be precious about danger. Like that's just a fact. There's a lot of dangerous jobs, and if this is like the most dangerous jobs, anything above that bar is one of those, and my job's one of those jobs. So I don't get to be. I get to mind my security. I don't want to put my team in a bad spot. I don't want to put the unit that I'm with in a bad spot. But if push and shove come together, my job is to be off the camp as many days as I can manage and still manage my relationships on the camp. So I don't get to worry about that. It's not that I don't manage it. It's not that I don't prep for it, but my job is a dangerous job. That's just it's not going to change.
How did you find yourself in becoming a combat spy? How did you like you still do this today?
No, no, no. I'm
Okay.
all done. I get called to do things, right? But it's not spying. Now it's those skills applied in a different way. So maybe I help an organization try to solve a problem like, hey, how do we do this, right? Or maybe I'll get hired to go do something internationally. It's never spying anymore, right? Nobody's hiring me for that, and I wouldn't take that work. That's not what I do. But if I can help them connect into a network that they need to accomplish something, then I'm probably pretty helpful at that. So sometimes I find myself in these meetings and I'm like, how did I get in this meeting? Oh my God, you know. But but the people who know what I do and benefited from my work in the past, they'll say, hey, I know a guy we should call and see what he thinks. And inevitably I'll be able to come in and say, well, you know, we're already because they approach things in the same way all the time. I know us. And so what I do usually is help them by not being us. I'm like, hey, let's do this and like that. By the way, I talked to two guys on the way in, and maybe we approach it this way. And so I'm able, because of my experience, which is a very unique experience in the military world, I'm able to give them a different point of view. And I'm always thinking about what I call the ground truth. Like, what's the reality here in this room? What's the reality outside on the ground? Because if we try to put too much of what's going on in the room on the people on the ground, in the cafes, at the barbershops, we're not going to be in alignment. We have to go know what those people think and do and how they might respond. We still may do the same thing,
Mhm.
but if we just make assumptions for them in their lives. And the other thing I always say is, you can't presume to improve the condition of someone you refuse to understand the condition of. You know, and we do that a lot. So like we come in and say, I know what your problem is. You don't shave enough. And the person's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Yeah, if you shaved more, you'd be better. And I'm using a ridiculous example, but it doesn't matter what the example is. If you go to a farmer and say, hey, what you need to do is use less water. Well, how much water less do I use? There's no gauges here, right? And I would ask these farmers, I would say, well, how much less? And they would say, like this much less. And I'm like, what's that mean? And he's like, and he is the one farmer, he does the international sign. All right, I'll tell you what. So he looks around like this and goes, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'll just do a little less. I don't know. And I'm like, are you really going to do it? And he's like, no, I know how to farm. I'm not changing how I farm. I can't risk it because I have to bring this crop in. That's how I feed my family. That's how we survive. And it works what we do. Could it be better? Sure. Am I going to risk it? Absolutely not. So we went from, hi, I'm a nice guy to, yeah, you know, maybe I'll do a little less. I'm absolutely not doing that. Right. But what's briefed by the Americans to the Americans is like, we trained all these farmers. They're going to use less water. They're going to bring in bigger crops. And that's going to yield, you know, and they would literally take it down this path. And then I would have to raise my hand, right? This is that condition thing. What's the market chain from that farmer to when a pomegranate ends up in somebody's mouth in India and America? Well, I don't know. Well, then why are you messing with it? You know, and that's what that condition thing is what is the condition of that farmer? Like, what does better look like for them? And they know what they're businessmen. They know how to make their business run better. They just don't have enough time and money. You know, like
Mhm.
any business. Like, hey, I want to do these things, but there's not enough of me to go around. So how do
Not
I do that?
not enough
Can I-
resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, not enough resources to do it. When did this become? When did espionage stop being enjoyable for you? When did you stop doing it? When did you stop and transition to now what you do for corporations and
Yeah.
different organizations now? When did that happen?
You know, it started becoming too much. I stopped like feeling things. I stopped acting normally, you know, because I had this I had the blessing of having this incredible job where I got special access to stuff. And I just stopped you know, it stopped being too cold, it stopped being too hot. And I was just doing this job because I was good at it. And I realized I was burning years of my life and I didn't know, well, one, you're rolling the dice in my job, but also there was no end point. You know, I would just keep doing this and to what end? And is America even benefiting from me doing this? And I kept being betrayed by our side, by the Americans. And I mean betrayed in not like, hey, we're here to help these guys. Okay, great. Here's some things that we can do with them. Yeah, let's do them. And then we wouldn't do them. over and over again. And it was like a soul burning thing. So I didn't mind the work. I like the process of doing the work. Very challenging. It's hard, but it just became too much. And I'm like, I have to do something else. Otherwise, I could be doing this 10 years from now and never have a real relationship, never see my daughter grow up, and as it was, I really didn't see her grow up very much at all. But if I was going to see any part of it, I had to get back home. And so that was like sort of the culmination. Where it was like, it's time for me to rotate back, and I'm going to do my best to never go back again. And it worked. A lot of my friends still work in that field, and I just got sick of threat all the time. Not threat from the other side, just us dealing with threat wherever there's a boogeyman around every corner, there's a bomb around every calendar day. And I got tired of living like that, and not having more control over what my life was going to be about. That for me was too big of a cost, and so I worked on transitioning away.
Did you ever find yourself? Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Is truly humbling to know that, I think that happens to most men. There comes a point in your life where you're like, this isn't working out for my daughter. I'm not, just like you said, I'm not spending time with my daughter. I want
Yeah.
something more, and
Yeah.
I want something bigger, right? What's the next thing? I think
Right.
I think when I go to the VA, I'm a veteran. When I go to the VA, I see so many men and women who, you know, who recount their life, and they look back, and they're proud of what they did.
Sure.
They were really good at it. They were professionals just like you, and they're like, well, what's next? What's the next thing? And I think that's hard. How do you go? Most people, like, I always told a friend, like, when I was in the Navy, I was in the submarine force, and so he was a torpedo man. Well, how do you go from working on torpedoes and bombs and TNT to now transitioning to something else? That's hard,
Yeah.
especially when you're good at it, right? When you're
Yeah.
really good at it, that's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you found a way. You found a way, brother. Did you ever
I
find
did.
yourself empathizing with an adversary? Did you ever feel,
Sure.
you know, yeah?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of these guys are doing things that I would say are extra legal. And one of the taskings is like find out who's selling black market gasoline. Well, that's not hard. You just go stand by the guy who's selling black market gasoline and you talk to him. And then I get to say to the commander, I get to go, hey, this isn't that big of a deal. This guy's just trying to feed his family. I looked at how many cars are coming, and I'm not an expert on this, and I'll look more into it if you'd like, sir. But uh, I wouldn't bother these guys. That they're just trying to like. I'd rather have them doing this than something else. And then the boss is like, "Perfect. That's what I was thinking. We'll just go with that assumption until something else changes." I just allowed the boss to better marshal his resources. We're not going to focus on the gas station guys. Maybe we pop in on them every now and then. Maybe we send a patrol over to count how many cars they're doing a day and just do some math. And it's like, yeah, that ain't hurting anybody. Even if it's funding the insurgency, right? Even if he's getting shut down, he's given 20 cars a day gas. I'm sorry, that's just not going to make a difference in an infantry platoon. It's like, yeah, let that guy have some money, or give him a job on the post. Like, no, 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 let him be an entrepreneur and go do his own thing. Like, that's literally how that went. And so, yeah, you have to understand their condition. You have to. And so when a farmer's like, I don't need this fancy thing you're giving me. I need feed and seed. You want to help me? Get me feed and seed you know and that's when you empathize, because so many of these folks are just trying to figure out their day-to-day thing, and they said the most brilliant things to me all the time, because they're real people and they have real observations, and those observations were just gold every time I can give that to a commander. And you get that by listening. It's not my job to talk, it's their job to talk, and by finding a way to empathize with them and to understand their situation, the miseries they've gone through, the horrors they've experienced, the challenges they go through every day. If you just listen, they will, I mean, and in a professional way, they'll tell you everything because no one's asked.
No one's cared.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
one,
right.
no one,
Yeah,
no one's cared enough.
right. Or acted like it, right? There's only so much I can do, and I'll say, I really can't help you with that. And I'd be honest, but I'm going to be honest, I can't help you with that. But I can't talk about it for you, and see if I can develop some interest. But chances are nothing. But here's what I can do. I can listen to you. I can understand better, and maybe you can introduce me to the right person who maybe will help me solve that problem. Because sometimes those guys are like, you need to talk to Larry, because Larry is the guy that's holding all this up. Maybe you can figure out what and that. So now I talk to Larry, and I'm like, hey, Larry, and I don't go there mean. I go there, "Hey, Larry, I was told that you were a guy to talk to about whatever chicken farming," you know, and Larry would be like, "Yeah, I am the chicken farming guy," and so you talk to him and you get to know Larry and you find out his deal, right? And you write a report, and that doesn't sound sexy and everything else, but that's the grit. That's what you have to do to turn the mill, so you can get something out the other end. You have to know people. You have to empathize with them. You have to talk to them. You have to listen to them. And if you do that in a professional manner, yeah, you'll find things out that nobody else can find out, and you can make a difference every single day in the fight, whether you're protecting something, improving something, or denying something. All of those things are available to you when you're a spy working in overseas places.
Absolutely. Can you describe can you describe the mental? I remember coming across people when people ask me what I did, and it's nowhere as near as interesting on what you has done for our country, sir. But one of the things is like I tell people I used to be on submarines, and they're like, "Oh, I could never do that. I could never do what you do." Can you describe the mental toll that and the emotions that you would feel, doing this? Because talking to people, building relationships, maintaining those relationships can be
Yeah.
draining
Oh,
um day to day. How did you handle that? How did you build up that mental toughness?
yeah. I mean, well, first off, you just do it, right? You know the deal. Like, whatever. What was your job in the Navy? What did you do?
I was administrative. I was a clerical. I was
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah,
a executive administrative for the CEO and the captain.
yeah. Right. So you don't get to feel bad about your job and not show up, right? Like, yeah, yeah, okay, you're going to work in this office for the boss every single day, right? But if you don't do your job, or you and your friends, I don't get paid. I don't get my mail. I don't get fed. I don't, and I can't do my job. So, a guy like you, like, yeah, you're right. Like, you have this straightforward job, but if you don't help the boss do his job, then when I come to the boss, like, things aren't getting done, and the boss is worried about getting people fed, getting people their mail, getting people paid, getting people boots, all these things that have to happen.
Food, yeah.
Yeah, all everything, right? And so, and it's not just the personnel shop, it's the logistics shop, it's the comm shop, it's the intel shop. All these things have to work to support a guy like me to go out and do what I do. And so there are no small jobs, because it's all integral and essential, because I have to get paid. If I'm not getting paid, uh, it's a problem, and everything stops, right? So it's not necessarily like what the job is, but you have to do your job every day. I had to do my job every single day, and that means I had to, like, how do I score every day? Well, I have to be relevant on the battlefield. To be relevant on the battlefield, I've got to go out and interact with people on the battlefield. And I am desperate to have someone from the intel shop, the two shop, come up to me and be like, Pete, first KPI, they're saying my name, Pete. They're not saying Mr. Turner, right? Pete, they know who you are. We've got message traffic. They want to kill you. And I'm like, yes, yes, that's good. That means I'm in the game, right? And I matter, and I'm impacting their operations. Hey, you bring a target, you better kill Pete. And that's good, because I'm drawing the enemy out. And that means that they're responding to what I'm doing. And it's a big thing. When the sheiks get a hold of my interpreter, hey, we want Pete to come to the house. We want to talk to him. Bring a patrol, bring him ready to do, but bring him here. We want to talk to him about some things that we can't get figured out. Yes, hell yeah. So
That's a win. That's a win.
it's a win. That's a win. When the Iraqi general's like, get me my advisor, and he means me, right? That's huge. When the staff, brigade, battalion, company, whatever it is, when they're using my words, my intel is now changing how they think about the operation. These are the things that I have to do. And I don't, the way to do that for me, and how I do it in my crazy job, is to get my ass off the camp every day and talk to people. Now, some days I have to stay on the camp and I have to do the job, that same job on the inside. So I'm always talking to people. I'm always building my reading list, because if you're not reading my reports, you're going to get caught unaware. And I tell them, you're going to get caught unaware. I don't want to happen. I want this to help you. If you're not getting what you need to grab me and say, hey, I need more of this, less of that. But if you don't do that, then I'm not an asset for you. And I need to be, because I know what you're doing requires intel. So let me help you. And so I would work just as hard off the camp as on it. And that pace of work, man, you know how it is. If it takes 20 hours, it takes 20 hours. And the next time, well, Maybe not the next time, but for a long time, 36-hour days happened all the time. And it's like, oh man, yesterday's finally done. What day is it? Tomorrow? Oh, okay, great. Let me get today started, and then you just take a little rest and you get right back to work because the pace is relentless. And that's one of the things that's very hard is you work yourself into a very bad state mentally, physically, because you can't care for yourself enough because there's too many important things to do. The pace of work is just frenetic.
Did you ever find what was your rank? Did your rank I imagine that your rank doesn't matter because you're dealing with everybody. You're dealing with high ranking officials, low end, you're working with the guy at the gas station, the entrepreneur at the gas station, but you're also talking to politicians, leaders.
Yeah.
So does rank even matter in that structure anymore? Is when it comes to dealing with you?
If I've done
'Cause
my job, no, it doesn't matter,
yeah.
because and a lot of the time I worked in and for and with the army, right? So sometimes as a contractor, sometimes I was a soldier, sometimes I was in the department of the army, right? So it kind of depends on the era that we're talking about. All of those eras, though, my rank, other than being a contractor, because there's a negative connotation there, my rank was really sort of irrelevant because I produced. And so, and every now and then they'd be like, "What rank are you?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I'm an E5 or whatever. I'm an E4." I was always a low ranking dude. Because of the way my career went, I didn't progress up in rank very much because I was on the go all the time. And so I missed a lot of those things that you're supposed to do to get promoted. And then I got out, right? And so every time I got close to the next rank, something would happen and get in the way. I was supposed to be an officer at one point, but they never got around to doing the paperwork. I was supposed to become an E6 at one point, but they never got around to doing the paperwork. And these are things out of my control, right? And so this would cause me to make a decision. I'm like, well, then I'm not going to stay in this path anymore because I can't do your paperwork for you, right? And so I would transition into something else. And so what happened was, and this wasn't by design, I stayed proximate to the ground. I always got to be close to the actual on the ground mission because I didn't promote away from it. And so I got better and better and better and better at tactical collection to the point where there's really, I'm not going to say I'm the greatest special agent of all time, but there's no better field agent in the military like when I was doing it than me. I don't do it anymore, but that was just true because I'd done it more than everybody else. The other day I did an interview with a guy who's a SEAL, and I'm like, hey, this isn't relevant necessarily to the show, but it's going to come up in some way. So I want to let you know, I have a lot of combat time. I've got over 1,000 combat missions. And he looked at me, it's a SEAL. He's like, whoa. And I'm like, yeah, man, I've done a lot of stuff. And it changed his attitude about me. Not that he had a bad attitude, but it gave him like, oh, this guy is legit. And so I could speak to him like a peer because I am a peer. Even though spies and SEALs aren't the same thing, he understands that like when you've been out of the wire that many times, gone on that many missions, I've seen everything several times. And so I know how to navigate that world. So rank was important in that that's what got me paid and everything else. When I was a civilian, it's like, hey, yeah, here's my rank. I have to translate my ranks and nobody knows what it means. I'm like, just figure I'm a colonel, whatever. And it didn't matter because I wasn't going to flex my rank, right? I'm not going to put anybody at parade rest or any of those things. I'm just going to go out and do my job, and they're going to
No
look.
one's saluting you. No one's saluting you.
No, 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 no. Yeah, I was never in a position where I needed to be saluted by anybody. Maybe I would salute somebody, maybe, but for the most part, that wasn't part of my gig. I was there to look, man. I was there to work, and I did good work, and so everybody just stayed out of my way. And so here's the secret to all this, right? You've worked for the boss. You know how this goes. I would tell the boss in advance, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's how long it'll take you to see what it means to you. And I'm good enough at this that at 3 months, you're going to look at me and say, Pete, you're our number one force multiplier. We couldn't have got here without you. And then you don't have to say that now because I'm already telling you, you're going to say that. And then you're going to point to your couch. You're going to say, anytime you want to talk to me about something, come in and talk to me because I want to make sure we have an open line of communication. And the commander would look at me like, did you just say all that stuff? And then I would say, here's why I'm saying all that stuff. Your peers have told me to tell you this because audacity, audacity, audacity. That's what you need to hear. So I'm telling you exactly what your peers who I've worked for have told me to tell you. And they're like, all right, I'll take that bet, And then sure enough, 3 months later, we'd be sitting there and he'd be talking to me, he'd be like, Pete. And I'm like, you don't got to say it. I already know, man. It's all right. I told you you'd say it. And he'd look at me and be like, you know what? There's the couch. Anytime you want to come in, don't wait in line. Just come in and talk to me because I told him the things that we were going to need to do. He was going to have to tune my attention. he was going to have to give me vertical knowledge that I didn't have, right? But I
Mhm.
also was going to give him the ability to communicate vertically in a way that he couldn't do. Now he's all powerful, but there's certain things he can't say that I can say for him. I can go out and find and prove to help him manage his expectations on high because he's got bosses. And so now I'm helping him win vertically as well as horizontally. And let me tell you something, you do that, they don't care what rank you are. You're an asset to them. You're helping them win. And that's my job is how do I help this guy win?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is incredible. This is an incredible conversation, and I love that. I'm glad you're here. Number one,
Thanks,
I'm
man.
gl- I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you've done over 1,000 hours of combat time. You've seen 1,000 hours of combat time, and just you've been just incredible. That's huge, and my heart goes out to you in that way. You're a rock star, man. You're a rock star. What's one myth about spying that Hollywood and movies and James Bond and Daniel Craig? What's one myth about spying that Hollywood gets wrong all the time that you see and you're like, man, that's not true. That's not what we do.
There's a lot of reality in these things, and that's the best way to approach this. But the reality is that Jack Ryan, Jason Bourne, James Bond. These guys are an amalgamation of several people, a team of people. Like just the pace of work alone is just crushing. And it's really hard to add capacity to a single spy who outperforms everybody else because I'm moving at a pace with the quality of work that I don't need to get hemmed up by an organization and extra meetings, right? So it's really hard to do that. So to do what James Bond does and to go on a hunch and fly somewhere and spend a bunch of money and then blow up a city block, in a giant chase, you don't get to go back to that country. Like they
Right,
arrested you.
right.
There's going to be consequences, and it's not just going to be like your boss being like, "Oh, darn you, James." It's going to be like, "Hey, man, you're going to go to jail. You blew up a
Mhm.
city block. People died, and because what? Why did you do that?" So when you go and you get into gunfights, it's really hard to go back the next week and be like, "Hey, I'm Pete. I was at a gunfight here last week. I'd like to talk to some folks." Right? Like that. It just doesn't work that way. It is exciting. That's exciting in that you're trying to figure this puzzle out. And that doesn't represent well. Look, movies got to be movies. They got a different job, right? But if you were to watch me work, you would never know I was working. You're like, what's Pete doing? He's messing around. He's talking to the guys over in FUOPs. What's he doing over there? He's got no business talking to those guys. And I'm yucking it up and I'm establishing rapport, right? I would always tell my friends, because I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy in my real life, and I'm not as serious as I am when I have to go do that work. It's a different professional attitude. I'm like, if you were to watch me, you'd be so bored and you wouldn't know what was going on. And I would have to spend so much time explaining it to you that it wouldn't be worth it for you. Like, so you don't
Mhm.
want to have to come do this thing. I've built up a particular muscle and it doesn't look anything like that. That said, at my best, yeah, Jason Bourne. Look, I know I can run flat out for a quarter mile, and I can do it in less than a minute. Not anymore. I'm old and fat now, but I could do that in less than a minute.
Did you
And
have to? Did you have to do that? Like,
no, no,
was
it's
that
just
part of being?
look, if I need to hustle, I want to make sure I can out hustle. I was pretty fast, right? So one of the things I figured was like, you have like these rings around. Here's how I protected myself. I'd have rings around myself. You were 10 yards away, not that worried about you. If you were 5 yards away, okay, I know I can kill you, right, with the gun. And if you were 1 yard away from me, I need to be really careful on how much I let them escalate the situation, right? And if I had to do anything, I was going to cut and run because most people aren't going to be able to catch me if I cut and run, right? And I never had to cut and run, by the way. It's just, you prepare for these things. I will tell you, and I'm not bragging, if you were wandering around trying to get into a gunfight with me and I had a pistol and you were 100 yards away, you better look out
Right,
because I hit you.
right.
And I'm not even joking about that. Like if you're within 20 yards of me, I'm particularly good shot. I'm not one of those ding, 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 ding kind of guys, but eh, go ahead and roll around on the ground for a couple of seconds 20 yards away from me and you're going to get a hole in you. So those are the kind of things that I could do pretty well. And it wasn't because I had a lot of practice. I just have a knack for shooting. I was taught well. And so I could just do those kind of things. When that helped, it never helped in combat because that's not my job, right? When that helped was when I would go to the teams and support those guys and they would run around and do all this practice stuff. I could shoot and they could tell. They'd be like, wait a second, you can shoot. And I'm like, yeah, I can shoot. I mean, I don't practice very much. Like, you don't practice. And I'm like, I have a knack for it, and I can hit really hard targets that are moving or very small. I can hit them. So, uh, that helped me establish rapport with those guys because the biggest thing I have to do is shrink the time it takes to get that unit to trust me. And if I could go out there and outshoot people, that helped me. And so that was a thing that I would use on occasion. You can't go around and be like, I challenge everybody to a shooting. You can't do that because that's kind of made up. But if you get a chance to go into a range, you're like, yeah, sure, I'll go to the range for the day. And I'll shoot a little bit. That'll be fun. And then they see and they're like, hey, wait a second, you're a serious, so those kind of things are similar to Jason Bourne and everything. You learn hand to hand combat a little bit, but I don't have time to become a professional. And again, like that's not my job. My job is to talk and figure out how to get them to talk. And that part of the job, you practice that. Here's how I learned how to do that. I did it a lot. And I also did practice conversations where I would just walk around the camp talking to myself out loud, working on question sets, That isn't what you want to see in a movie, right? But I would have hundreds of conversations in a deployment because I would have to figure out how do I get to this? How do I get to this question? How do I get them to answer this? Well, I got to ask this right question above that, above that, above that. And so I would reverse engineer that conversation and practice it so that whatever conversation came out, I was prepared for it, and I wouldn't be uncomfortable when it got there because I'd already encountered that question before. I had already had that thought before, and so it's a lot of repetition. For sure, a guy like Jason Bourne does all that stuff. For sure, James Bond does all that stuff. Like they think through these things in advance until you get to a point where you've thought of everything and you can just adapt to anything. And so that stuff is true. But it's very rare to find someone at that level in my specific part of spying because we don't typically get to do it for more than 6 to 18 months in a career. And then you promote away from it and do it less and less all the time.
Yeah, you ever have to wear a disguise, like a mask or a fake nose or glasses?
I have. I've worn a disguise. Yeah, I have.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Not in the combat zone, but in doing some other work on the. And I can't talk about it too much, but
right.
I was doing some surveillance work for the U.S. government, and yeah, we had to wear disguises. But it's a it's a bit silly. Surveillance to me is interesting, but it's not the thing that I do well. Like I can do it, right? I understand the principles of it, but the folks that are professional at it, they're better than me. Like I'm useful, right? They love it. They get crazy about it. And I know a lot about it. Right? I've done it, but the disguise thing is it's not something I laugh at, but it's just not part of what I do. And so I don't feel like truly comfortable doing that. I kind of just I'll say it. I kind of mock it. I'm like, no disguise. But you need to have a disguise if you're doing the right certain kind of surveillance, you need to be able to change your appearance all the time so that the person doesn't know that you're surveilling them, and at least
Absolutely.
try to reduce the opportunity for that. That's really why in my case, wore a disguise. For the most part, I was just Pete everywhere I went, no matter what. And here's why I do that. So that wherever I go in that valley, wherever I go in that state that I'm in, I'm the same dude. They meet the same guy every single time. There's no lies. It's all honest. And so, because I'm trying to build trust, man, right? And
Yeah.
so I don't want to use a disguise. I don't want to obscure my name. I'm going to use my name. No, my name's Pete Turner. If you want to talk to me, I'd love to talk to you. Please, let's talk. That's my job. And so, no, I do the opposite of wearing a disguise. I even to this, I'm not wearing it today. You often wear a shirt that says spy on it, just because that's sort of my approach to it is like, let's just be upfront about what I'm doing. And the thing is in my community, my peers will say, oh, you're not a spy. You can't say that. And I'm like, this doesn't matter what you think. By the way, you're a spy. like, we know what we did. But if we got caught by the enemy, if we're walking around in a battlefield, that's the way they see us.
Right.
And so let's just cut out all the nonsense. I'm like, well, I'm with US security forces. Yeah, that means you're a spy. Like it's just funny. And the other funny thing is if I tell people, oh yeah, I used to be a spy, or when I was a spy, oh yeah, I'm a spy. I go overseas and I do work. They're like, you can't tell us that. And I'm like, why can't I? I'm not telling you anything classified. And they would never believe me. And so I'm like, it doesn't matter if you believe me or not, but that's really what I do. And I could talk to you about it for hours. I just can't tell you the particulars about what I do. Most of what I did was only classified in that moment, really. Like once I left and that command left, it wasn't all that classification went out the window because the stuff I did was so tactical, so short term that it didn't matter if we talked about it openly, because most of it wasn't classified. Maybe there's some operation, but I would never tell you about that, and you wouldn't even know about that because I wouldn't tell you about it.
Right.
Hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, I've worn disguises, but for the most part, I'm just me. I'm just me. That's the best way to do it for me.
Absolutely. I remember talking to another gentleman. He said, sometimes it's not like the movies. It's not as detailed as the movies make it out. Where it's not always I got to put a fake rubber mask on. Sometimes it
Yeah,
could be just glasses. It could be
yeah,
glasses. It could be a hat. It could be a hoodie. It could
yeah.
be blend. It's blending in through. You know, I
Yeah, they
always
call it
see.
a wash. You just change your clothes. Change
Yeah,
your
you
clothes.
change your clothes, you don't look like an American, right? You don't
Yeah,
look like you blend in with the locals. And that
right.
is blending in. You've blended and you look like everybody else. If you're walking around in shorts and you look like the next person next to you, then no one's going to notice you because you're not different. Versus if I had an American flag, an American hat, and I had, bangles or a Puff
Yeah,
Daddy chain, that
yeah,
stands out in a
yeah,
country full of farmers. You're gonna
yeah.
stand out. So
Yeah, they're gonna remember that you're there. Wasn't there a guy with a big old chain around here? Where's that guy at? Right. And so yeah, you're trying to avoid that. Even if you rotate around, you're like, I keep seeing that guy with that chain. Oh man, maybe I'm being surveilled. And that's a possible thing. Look, letting someone know they're being surveilled is part of surveillance sometimes, because that makes them act differently and causes different things to happen. So sometimes it's okay to let them know you're there. It just kind of depends on what the goal of the surveillance is. And that's, look, that's getting pretty fancy. You want to talk about counter surveillance and counter surveillance, but all those things exist: double agents, triple agents, even quadruple agents. It's crazy. So all of that stuff exists. There's a lot of intrigue involved. That's not what I did. What I did for the most part, I touched on that stuff, but for the most part, what I did was I went off camps and war zones and I talked to people and I got them to tell me things. And I got really, really good at it.
absolutely, absolutely. How many languages do you know?
Just English, really. I mess
What?
around with a bunch of, yeah, I know.
Really?
I mess around with a bunch of them, but really have capacity, real true capacity only in English. But let me explain something to you though.
Mhm.
When you're like me, maybe I'll learn a language. Maybe I go learn Arabic or something like that. It's so hard to develop any kind of mastery. It doesn't make sense to invest that much time in that. You're better off learning how to go interact with other cultures, which also they don't train us to do very well. So my approach was to become great at working with interpreters. And there's no this is even though. So here's the thing. This is a real thing. I would ask my buddies who were SEALs and Green Berets, I'm like, have you had more conversations in combat zones or fired bullets? And they're like, absolutely conversations. And I can, where have you spent the
Mm.
bulk of your training? Firing bullets. Have you ever had a class, like an in-depth class, professional grade class, like scuba diving class, in how to work with an interpreter? No, never. Isn't that crazy? All we do is talk in our lines of work. And yes, you want to be lethal and all that stuff, but we don't ever spend time on building the capacity to reliably talk to anybody through somebody else. Because I don't need to know a language. I need to know how to use an interpreter. That interpreter is going to be better at me at the local culture, the local language. They don't have, like, they can tell me the colloquialisms that I would never know. Egyptian English is different than Yemeni English, and different than, or I should say, Arabic. So all these things are different. You have to try to master all of them. Some people have a knack for that. Most of those people don't go off the camp. They stay on the camp because they have a mastery of several languages and they just process language as it comes in. So when I look at how to work these things, I don't care what the language is. I don't care what the culture is. I'm going to learn those things on the ground, and I'm going to become good at the language, at least in listening and understanding. I'm not very good at speaking, but I can understand a lot of Serbo-Croatian. At the time I could learn, knew a lot of German, French, Italian, Spanish, lots of Arabic from different parts of the Arab world, but and Pashto. I learned a lot of Pashto as well. But I have no business talking about it. What I understand is, like, what I get to is the gist of what they're saying. If it's a conversation I can understand. So like if it's a farming conversation in like Baghdad, Iraqi, Arabic, then I wouldn't need a whole lot of help, but I wouldn't be able to speak back. I'd be like, oh, he's talking about the chicken farms, because I've learned all about chicken farms and I'd heard of the word chicken and I knew it, and I knew sunshine and I knew all these other words. So I had a bunch of words that I had a mastery of, so I could understand what the interpreter was hearing. But my bigger focus was letting that interpreter help me figure out how to find the thing that they needed to think. This is a big thing that amplified my work was I would let those guys do a lot of the work because they knew the people better than I could. and they could speak in a way that was better because the way you ask questions is important, and the cycle and the direction and the order is important. And those, I would work with these guys. Like, here's what we're going to ask. Here are the things we're trying to find out. And they'd be like, I get what you're trying to do. Thanks for working with me. This helps me out. I know how to ask these questions. And invariably, these guys would, the locals would look at my interpreter and say, do you work for him or does he work for you? You know, I would give them so much rope, right? And because they understood what I needed. And this invigorated the interpreters. One, I wouldn't let anybody, you know how this goes. If anybody from the military messed with my interpreter and he was a local, I'm like, if they were from America, whether they're American or green card, either way, if I, whatever kind of interpreter I had, I'm like, if someone messes with you, do whatever they say, get their name in unit, I'll take care of it. And I would bring them back with me. And I would go up to that dude and be like, listen, I could talk to you, talk to your boss. How do you want to handle this? And sometimes they got dumb and they said, you better talk to the boss. And I'm like, okay. Like, if you ever talk to my interpreter like that again, you're going to have to deal with me. This guy goes off the camp more than anybody else out here. I work this guy hard. He's a warrior. You'll respect him. He has to have his badges. He has to wear the right things. No problem with that. But if you look at this guy and you don't recognize what he's doing, let me tell you, and then it would check him up. And my interpreter would get treated differently. I would also, if they were locals, I'd walk them. Day one that I got him, like, you want to work with me? It's going to be hard. We're going to go out every day. It's going to be dangerous. You have to work. And I'm going to cut you loose when it's my work time. But when we're going to go out every day, if you can handle that, cool. And they'll be like, yes, of course, I want to do this. This sounds like fun. Okay, cool. Where's your contract interpreter shop? And they'd be like, over there in that building. We go over there and be like, I need to get this guy a raise. And every single time I'd go out and get that guy more money. Because if you give a guy respect and you get him a raise, man, they are down. They are down. I needed dudes that were down, man. I needed them to be down like 4 flat tires. Like, I wanted them to believe in me, and then I believed in them because I'm going to work the shit out of them, you know, because that's my job, right? I've got to be out and I've got to work with these guys. They've got to understand what I'm doing, where I'm going, and our lives are on the line together. And I want to meet the most dangerous, baddest, nastiest dudes we can find because that's my job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to talk about transitioning now to podcasting.
Yeah.
Your skills clearly have transitioned over to interviewing and storytelling. What specifically do you find yourself doing? Do you analyze people? Can you tell when someone is like lying to you on an interview, when they're sharing a story or they're sharing something to you? Like,
I don't worry so much about lying. You know, if I detect something that I want to get into, then sure, I might get into it, but my job more than anything else is to let them talk, let them explain what it is. And sometimes we've got challenging topics on, so I don't want to step on them too much. So I focus on who they are, what they're about, what's interesting to them, and I try to let them have all the microphone that they can handle, so that they can explain what they're doing. I don't worry about lying. I do worry about them being on talking points. Like, I hear that talking point. Let's dig into that, you know, and really get deeper into whatever the thing is that they're talking about. I don't want them giving me the scripted answers. I want them to give me some richness because that's what my audience wants to hear. That's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear the thing you always say. I want to hear like the axioms and stuff. But how did you get to that axiom? That's so much more interesting to me. Like when I say you can't presume to improve the condition of something you refuse to understand the condition of. I owe you an explanation as to what the hell that even means and how did I get there, right? So those are the things that I look for is find that interesting thing, slow down, back up, and then examine it and really look at how they got to that moment of brilliance or genius or whatever it is and gather that wisdom and highlight it if at all possible. And also just have a good time because I've had enough like war and everything else. It's nice just to have an enjoyable show. Like, we're having a great chat here. I'm getting to do all the talking, but I'm the guest, right? So it's great to do these things. And so this is more of what my focus is, less worrying about people lying. And we're just having this great conversation on a Tuesday afternoon, you know, with you. That's what I'm about.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the compliment. I enjoyed this conversation as well. And it's so fascinating to me because you meet the most interesting people. You meet the most incredible people like yourself who
Yeah.
are giving, right? They're giving back. They're sharing their knowledge. They're sharing their wisdom. And
That's
so
right.
that is worth its weight in gold to me because
Yeah.
I'll tell you, my grandfather, he built the house that he and my grandma lived in from scratch. He owned the airplane, and he was in the Navy, a Navy sailor. He invested his money. He was an investor. He owned land. He owned goats. He owned real estate. And then all of a sudden, one day, he had a stroke and he had dementia and he
Oh,
lost his mind. And so the all that knowledge, right? All that information, all that was all the information, all the knowledge, all the insight that you have in that incredible mind is like that's what podcasting is all about, to share wisdom. I feel like a philosopher,
yeah,
right? I
for sure.
enjoy having conversations with people like you who conversations don't always necessarily lead to an argument. I can
Right.
I can
Yeah.
I can listen to you and I can hear you and I can say, teach me more, because
Yeah.
I don't know everything.
Same.
And I can learn and I can explore a whole different world without ever leaving this seat, because your mind, your incredible mind, has done it all and experienced it all. And so that's you're right. Podcasting is incredible, and it really just sets the tone for everything else. And
Yeah.
you're right. Have you ever had to study a culture? Had you ever have? I know you say you don't have to study the language, but because you use a translator, did your translator, was they familiar? Were they the ones that were familiar with customs? Like, hey, you don't address the woman, you always address the man. You
Yeah.
did you ever have
You
to learn
know,
anything like that about a culture?
yeah, and let me just say this to you. I think talking so much, my battery's starting to run low. So
Oh,
I don't know if I can jump up and grab a charger, but I may need to.
we're live.
So
So
on the culture thing, it's interesting. It's kind of like the language thing. So the military tries to teach you culture, but they're just not very good at it. It's baseline. It's not really useful to me. Here, I'll give you an example. When they try to give you some basic language capacity, and one of the favorite phrases for me that they try to teach us is, in the native tongue, you will say, "Do you speak English?" Right? And then I'll raise my hand and say, "Why don't we just say, 'Do you speak English?'" Because if they do, they will say yes, and if they don't, they go, "What?"
right.
And so the cultural part is the same thing, man. Like they're like, when you're in the Arab world, don't use your left hand to eat food with. And I'm like, yeah, okay, thanks, Einstein. Like that's not going to help me. How do I use culture to my advantage? How do I use their culture to my advantage? And so that was my approach, was to understand it. Yes, my interpreter for sure accelerates my ability to understand it. And here's the thing, and this is for anybody listening. If you're going into a cross-cultural situation, which is any situation, you go to a different church, you go to a different a friend's house. Like I've been to so many Christmases. I've been to Oakland Black Christmas. I go to Mexican Christmas at my brother's house. I go to all these Mormon Christmas. A lot of my family's Mormon. You go to all these different kinds of Christmases. They're all basically the same, right? And if you see something different, you can say, "Hey, that's different than what we do. What's that tradition come from?" And then the person's either going to tell you or not. They don't mind you asking questions about it. And so when it comes to like eating with the left hand, I can go. And so I know this, right? And I know because I've learned this from being in the field. And so I'm sitting with these Iraqi sheikhs, and I'm like, I eat left-handed, and I know that like that's sort of forbidden. And they're like, "Pete, you're from California. We know you're not from here. It's okay. Just eat the food. Enjoy yourself. We understand." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." And so instead of worrying about giving an offense, I was given a license to learn. Now look, you have to learn and you have to inculcate a little bit, right? But even then, you'd be like, "I don't want to become too much you guys. I don't want to wear like your guys' clothes." So like, yeah, don't. I mean, that would be weird for you to wear our clothes. Don't wear our clothes. We hate it when your women wear hijab because they're not from here. They don't have our religion. And so, yeah, we appreciate that they're trying to be respectful, but it's not important. And one of my KPI, I had General Stanley McChrystal on the show the other day. We were talking about this one time where it's during Ramadan, and I'm with the boss. We're on this patrol, and we go talk to the local Iraqi colonel. And I wanted to offer a lesson to my commander in a way that he would understand it. And again, I'm not in his unit; I'm working with his unit, right? So I'm a Department of Army guy, so we're more peers than anything else. So I'm not talking down to him, but I bring my canteen out. I never brought a canteen, but I brought my canteen out, and I'm like, "Hey, Makadam's colonel in Arabic. I don't say I know it's Ramadan, but if I drink from my canteen, is that going to offend you? I know the whole answer here, but it's all a setup, right?" And he's like, "Pete, no, you're not Arabic. You're not Islamic. No, drink all the water. Matter of fact, you know what? do you want to have some whiskey? Because I got whiskey here in my desk. And I'm like, hell yeah. This is a KPI for me. Anytime I get offered a drink, a shot, whatever it is, I rip that thing right there because
Really?
it takes down barriers. And in my job, you're allowed to do that, right? But to do it in front of a boss, wow, that's crazy. And I told Stan, I'm like, if I got invited into a mosque in front of your face, I would say yes. And I wouldn't care about the consequences because that is my job. And he's like, well, I'd expect you to go. I'd expect you to go, because I know that my job is right. So I can culturally work my way into getting invited to weddings, to get invited inside of a mosque, to drink in the battlefield, because my job is to understand the culture and work within it. And if they offer me a drink, if a farmer offers me his pigs that he's killed and we have dinner together, and he offers me his drink, his smoke, his coffee, man, how can I say no to that? If I went to your house and I was like, it's okay, I don't want, I have food allergy, nah. That's fine, right? But I've put a lot of barriers up. If I come in and I'm like, what is that? Oh, we thought you'd enjoy this. This is our very favorite dish. It's chicken casserole, whatever it is. I'm like, well, let's try it. I want to eat it. And guess what? If I like it, I'm gonna eat seconds. And if I don't, I'm be like, oh man, that's wild for me. And then they'll get a kick out of me being honest and be like, that's a little tough. Oh, geez, it's okay to be yourself and say, I'm not trying to cause problems, because they get that. You're a guest. You're trying to talk to them. Learn how to be a good guest. Say yes to things. Allow them to give you things. Allow them to tell you how wonderful their place is, because they're going to tell you all the good things and for sure all the bad things. And so that's how I handle culture. Is I just experience it and I call it miscomfort. It's not uncomfortable. I just don't know that comfort. And so I just allow their world to be their world. And it's my job to sort out what it's like in there so that I can take that back to the boss and say, here's why they don't use these water pumps, or whatever it is, because now I've earned the right to talk to them. It's all about this trust building that I'm all about. Is how do I build trust? I use their culture to my advantage to accomplish my goals. And I do that by not worrying about offending anybody. I'm not trying to offend. I'm not doing things that are going to offend. But even if I do come across something, man, they don't care. Like if you act like a person who cares about them, they care about you and they want to, even if they hate you, they're like, you know what? I don't like Pete. I want to kill him, but I got to admit, he's pretty cool, or I got to admit, I have to respect him. Right. And so that's what you're looking for when it comes to the cultural thing. And they just don't have a class for that. There's for sure texts, right? And they hire these guys that are experts in it, but the military doesn't take it seriously. They don't say, hey, this is really important. It's so important. And you know how it is like in the Navy, in the Army, whatever it is, you can be trained on a job. Like if you're going to be, this is for anybody watching, if you're going to become an official instructor and you're going to teach things, you have to go to instructor school. You don't just get to stand up there and make crap up. No. You have to go, and it becomes part of your job code. And so you're a submarine, driver or nuclear guy or whatever it is, first class, second, whatever it's going to be, right? Oh, and by the way, I'm language qualified. Oh, and by the way, I'm instructor certified. Oh, and by the way, they don't do that with culture. It's like, let's go make it up. Grab an interpreter and go do what you want to do. It's like so anti what we do. Like whatever your job is, like, if you're on a sub and you're doing clerking, right? You don't get to make up all the procedures. And,
Right.
and if you're getting things wrong, your NCO will be above you and they'll say, here's how you do this. Here's how you do this here. And they'll train you specifically to do that, to shoot a weapon, to do all those things. Culture, language, no, nothing. They just make it up. Just make it up. Do whatever you want to do. Now you're prepped for the battlefield. They talk all this stuff about how, like, a gallon of sweat is worth, whatever. Blah, blah, blah. But a lot of it's nonsense because they don't train on the thing that you're going to go and do. I'm going to go sit and talk to sheikhs every day. Well, let's hire some sheikhs. Let's get them in here. Let's talk to these guys every day. Let's put these 10 dudes on an airplane and send them to Egypt with interpreters and go walk around and figure out what it's like to do this every day before you deploy. No. We're going to go to NTC and not do that at all. They do a little bit of it, but not like they're being serious about it. It's crazy to me. So that's what I do, man, is I just get serious about it and I learn everything I can. I go and sit with the interpreters. They tell me all about it and I become part of their world because that's my job, is to become part of people's worlds and then bring that world back to the boss and to the staff.
Absolutely. This has been an incredible conversation, an incredible dialogue. You have an incredible mind, sir. If you've shared so much wisdom, so much insight today, if you had one more piece of advice for the young man or young girl watching you right now, what would you say to them? some
I would say this:
encouragement.
everything's a competition. It doesn't mean you have to win every competition. Some competitions you have to skip, right? But everything is a competition. So if you're going to pour your heart into something, let that be the thing you pour your heart into until you don't want to anymore. Then do the next thing. But if you want to approach the world kind of undecisive and unsure, just pick something and do that thing. Do it as hard as you can for as long as you want to, and then adjust accordingly. But if you think that you can go halfway and beat somebody who's going hard as they can, their heart is all the way in it, you're crazy. Don't worry about the things you're not going to put effort into. Like if you're worried about the climate and you're not going to become a climate scientist, go find a thing that you want to worry about that you're willing to put your time into, right? Like most people never swim 10 miles in their life. They just don't, right? And that's okay. Don't become a swimmer. You don't win that competition. But if you went out and you did whatever it is that you do, whether it's your passion or your money making thing, and you got better and better and better at it, wow, well, now you're tough to beat. And that's the whole thing. Just go out and compete like crazy against yourself. You're always your biggest change agent. And then when you have peers that you look around like, I'm going to outwork this dude or this dudette, and we're going to get it on. We'll see who wins this thing. And then you do, right? And sometimes everybody wins. So it's all right. Just get out there and work your ass off, and you'll overcome most of your problems. How did I do, Marcus? Is that all right?
You did fantastic. How can people find you? How can people connect with what you're doing?
Pretty easy. Pete A. Turner on X is probably the best way. I'm on there quite a lot, but my show is on YouTube, and just Pete A. Turner on YouTube as well. Break It Down Show is the name of it. You can find me there. You can find me on Facebook. I'm not that hard to find. And so, yeah, you can get me on Podmatch. If you go on Podmatch, I'm on there. I'm glad to come on your show. I do my best to to follow up with people. I'm pretty bad at that channel, frankly. But yeah, Pete A. Turner on all social media, and I would love to hear from all of you.
Love it, love it, love it. We got to let this incredible man go. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope this helps take your podcast, take your game, take your trusting people to the next level. Live your truth. Like we end every show, take care of your friends, take care of your family, and always, always take care of business. This is Marcus, your favorite gentleman, and Pete Turner, the combat spy extraordinaire and podcast host. Check him out, y'all. He's fantastic. Love you guys. Bye.